You have been carrying a weight that was never yours to hold. You have spent months, maybe years, trying to figure out where things went wrong. You replay conversations in your head. You question your memory. You wonder why you keep feeling exhausted, confused, and completely disconnected from your own sense of reality. If you are tired of trying to make sense of a situation that was designed to keep you guessing, take a breath. You are not losing your mind. You are experiencing the aftermath of a very specific kind of psychological influence. And the fact that you are still here, still searching for clarity, means your inner compass is intact. It has just been temporarily obscured. The first thing you need to understand is that none of this happened because you were flawed, needy, or unable to handle a healthy relationship. Healthy relationships do not leave you questioning your own worth. They do not require you to constantly monitor someone else's mood to feel safe. What you went through was an imbalance. It was a dynamic built on control, not connection. The confusion you feel is not a personal failure. It is a normal human response to an environment where the rules kept changing, where affection was used as a reward, and where your own perceptions were consistently questioned. You were placed in a situation where your natural empathy and willingness to understand were turned against you. That is not weakness. That is how psychological influence operates. It relies on your humanity, not your deficiencies. The mechanism behind this influence is not complicated. It is conditioning. It works through repetition, emotional inconsistency, and the slow replacement of your internal reference points with someone else's narrative. When you are around someone who uses manipulation as a primary way of relating, they do not need to force you to comply. They only need to make you doubt your own judgment until you start looking to them for guidance on how to feel, what to believe, and who you are. Over time, your attention becomes focused on managing their reactions rather than honoring your own needs. Your nervous system adapts to unpredictability. You learn to anticipate shifts in tone, to measure your worth by their approval, to adjust your behavior to maintain stability. This is not a choice you made. It is a survival adaptation. And it can be undone. To reverse this influence, you first need to see it clearly. You need to understand how it was built so you can take it apart piece by piece. The process usually begins with intense validation. At first, the attention feels deeply comforting. You feel seen. You feel chosen. The connection moves quickly, and your brain registers this as safety. But in these dynamics, that early intensity is not about genuine intimacy. It is about establishing a baseline of dependency. When someone floods you with idealization, they are not showing you their true capacity for consistency. They are showing you a temporary mirror. And once you are emotionally invested, the mirror changes. The same person who once praised your independence now criticizes it as stubbornness. The same person who celebrated your sensitivity now calls it oversensitivity. The shift is rarely announced. It happens gradually, in small adjustments, until you find yourself working harder to get back to where you started. This is where the conditioning takes hold. Your brain is wired to seek resolution. When warmth is replaced with distance, or affection is replaced with criticism, your nervous system tries to restore the original state. You start asking what you did wrong. You try to adjust your behavior to bring back the earlier version of the relationship. But because the earlier version was never stable, it never returns. Instead, you are given just enough attention, just enough reassurance to keep you engaged. This is called intermittent reinforcement. It is the same psychological principle that makes unpredictability so difficult to step away from. When rewards are given at random intervals, the brain becomes hyper-focused on the next possible moment of relief. You stop living in the present and start living in anticipation. You become emotionally invested in the hope that things will return to how they felt at the beginning. That hope is what keeps the influence active. The effect of this cycle is not just emotional, it is physical and cognitive. You may notice that your memory feels foggy. You may find yourself apologizing for things that never happened. You might catch yourself defending the very behavior that hurt you. This happens because prolonged exposure to inconsistency forces your mind to work overtime to make sense of conflicting information. When reality is constantly reframed, the brain looks for a stable point to hold on to. If the other person refuses to take responsibility, your mind starts filling in the gaps. You begin to assume the blame, because it feels easier than accepting that someone you trusted is operating outside of mutual respect. You start shrinking your needs to keep the peace. You silence your doubts to avoid conflict. You tell yourself that if you just communicate better, if you just try harder, the tension will ease. But the tension was never about communication. It was about control. And you cannot fix a control problem by giving up more of yourself. Recognizing this is the first real step toward reversing the influence. You do not need to prove what happened. You do not need their admission. You only need to trust your own experience. The confusion you feel is evidence of the dynamic, not proof of your failure. When you stop trying to decode their behavior and start observing the pattern, the fog begins to lift. You will notice how often your energy was spent managing their emotions instead of attending to your own. You will see how your boundaries were treated as obstacles rather than normal human limits. You will understand that the push and pull was never about love. It was about maintaining leverage. Once you see the structure, it loses its power. Manipulation only works in the dark. It thrives on ambiguity, on unspoken rules, on the quiet assumption that you are the one who needs to change. When you bring it into clear light, it stops functioning as a hidden force and becomes something you can simply acknowledge and step away from. Awareness changes how you relate to your own thoughts. Instead of asking why you stayed or why you kept trying, you start asking what you learned. You begin to separate your natural compassion from the guilt that was attached to it. You realize that empathy is not a flaw. It is a strength that was misdirected. You stop measuring your worth by how much you could tolerate. You start measuring it by how honestly you can honor your own limits. This shift does not happen overnight. It happens through quiet repetition. Every time you choose to trust your memory over their revision, you rebuild a neural pathway. Every time you allow yourself to feel disappointed instead of rushing to fix it, you reclaim emotional space. Every time you refuse to engage in circular arguments that go nowhere, you protect your nervous system. You are not fighting the influence anymore. You are simply refusing to feed it. Reversing psychological influence is not about confrontation. It is about recalibration. You start by stepping back from the emotional gravity that kept you locked in place. This does not mean cutting everyone out of your life or becoming cold. It means creating a calm distance between their behavior and your internal state. You stop taking their reactions as a reflection of your value. You stop treating their silence as a puzzle to solve. You stop waiting for closure that will never come through their words. Closure is not something they give you. It is something you build by aligning your actions with your own truth. When you stop seeking validation from the source of the confusion, your mind finally has room to settle. You begin to trust your instincts again. You notice when your shoulders drop. You notice when your breathing deepens. These are not small details. They are signs that your nervous system is returning to baseline. Boundaries are the practical expression of this recalibration. A boundary is not a threat. It is a clear statement of what you will and will not participate in. It is not about changing the other person. It is about changing your relationship to them. You do not need to announce your boundaries loudly. You simply need to enforce them quietly and consistently. If a conversation becomes manipulative, you step back. If someone tries to pull you into old arguments, you disengage. If you are expected to justify your peace, you refuse. This is not cruelty. This is self-respect. And self-respect is the antidote to psychological influence. When you treat your own limits as non-negotiable, you send a signal to your own brain that you are no longer available for emotional exploitation. The influence fades not because they changed, but because you changed the terms of your participation. Detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means indifference or emotional shutdown. Real detachment is simply the refusal to let someone else's instability dictate your internal weather. You can care about someone and still choose distance. You can acknowledge their humanity without sacrificing your own. Detachment is the space where clarity lives. It is where you stop reacting and start responding. It is where you recognize that you are not responsible for managing someone else's self-image. When you release that responsibility, you stop carrying the weight of their unresolved patterns. You begin to see that their need for control was never about you. It was about their own inability to tolerate vulnerability, accountability, or genuine equality. Understanding this removes the personal sting. It allows you to view the situation as a psychological dynamic rather than a personal rejection. As you continue this process, you will notice shifts in how you carry yourself. You will stop over-explaining. You will stop rushing to fix discomfort. You will stop shrinking your voice to avoid triggering someone else's defensiveness. These changes are not about becoming rigid. They are about becoming grounded. You are learning to sit with uncertainty without losing yourself. You are learning to trust that peace does not require permission. You are learning that your worth is not negotiable, and it does not depend on someone else's ability to recognize it. This is the foundation of emotional independence. It does not require hatred, resentment, or revenge. It only requires honesty. Honesty about what happened. Honesty about how it affected you. Honesty about what you will no longer tolerate. Healing from this kind of influence is not about erasing the past. It is about integrating it without letting it define you. You do not need to forgive to move forward. You only need to understand enough to stop repeating the same patterns. You will notice that your triggers become less intense over time. You will catch yourself before you fall into old habits of self-blame. You will start making decisions based on what feels steady rather than what feels urgent. This is how you rebuild your internal compass, not by forcing yourself to forget, but by consistently choosing yourself in small, quiet ways. You prioritize rest. You honor your boundaries. You allow yourself to feel anger without turning it inward. You let disappointment exist without rushing to smooth it over. These choices accumulate. They rebuild your sense of reality from the ground up. The influence you experienced was real, but it was not permanent. Psychological conditioning can be reversed because the human brain is adaptable. Every time you choose clarity over confusion, every time you choose distance over depletion, every time you choose truth over tension, you are rewriting the pattern. You are not trying to convince yourself it did not happen. You are simply refusing to let it dictate your future. You are learning that peace is not something you earn through endurance. It is something you claim through alignment. When your actions match your values, the noise fades. When your boundaries are clear, the manipulation loses its foothold. When you stop searching for answers in the wrong place, you finally find them in yourself. You do not need to prove your strength to anyone. You only need to practice it quietly. Strength in this context is not loud, it is steady. It is the ability to walk away from a conversation that drains you. It is the willingness to say no without over-explaining. It is the courage to trust your own perception even when it contradicts someone else's narrative. It is the patience to allow yourself to heal at your own pace. You have already done the hardest part. You have seen through the illusion. You have recognized the imbalance. You have decided that your peace matters more than your confusion. That decision changes everything. Moving forward does not mean forgetting what happened. It means refusing to let it occupy more space than it deserves. You will carry lessons, not scars. You will carry clarity, not bitterness. You will know how to spot emotional inconsistency before it takes root. You will know how to protect your energy without shutting down your heart. You will understand that healthy connection does not require you to lose yourself. It requires you to show up fully, with clear boundaries, honest communication, and mutual respect. And if you ever find yourself back in familiar patterns, you will know exactly how to step out. Not through force, but through recognition. Not through drama, but through detachment. Not through waiting, but through choosing. The psychological influence you experienced was built on confusion. You reverse it through clarity. It was sustained by your willingness to keep trying. You end it by stepping back. It thrived on your silence. You dismantle it by trusting your voice again. You do not need to become someone new to heal. You only need to return to yourself. The person who knows their limits. The person who honors their truth. The person who no longer trades peace for approval. That person has been here the whole time. They were just waiting for the noise to clear so they could speak again. Listen to them. Follow their lead. And keep moving forward, one clear choice at a time.